Why do real estate deals fall through? You see the house go pending online and then a few weeks later it comes back on the market. Why? Why does this happen? Well guys, in this video we're gonna go through the top 7 reasons why real estate deals fall apart. So if you're curious about why the houses keep coming back on the market, or if you're looking to buy or sell and you want to make sure it's smooth sailing all the way, we've got a great video coming up. How's it going, everyone? My name is Matt Leighton and welcome back to another real estate video. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing so you will always stay up to date on the latest real estate video. All right, guys, let's just dive right into the video. The first reason why deals fall through is home inspection issues. And this breaks down into 3 different categories. Number 1, the home inspector that the buyer hires may scare the buyer. They may be a deal killer where they just list out every single item wrong with the house and pretty much scare the buyer into backing out. Number 2, the buyer may just list an excessive amount of repair items for the seller to fix, and the buyer may be completely unreasonable and just have a huge laundry list of items. Then the third reason why deals fall through because of the inspection is sellers that are unreasonable and don't want to fix anything, even if the buyer does have a legitimate reason for asking for something to be fixed. If I could just leave you with one tip, well, 2 tips for the inspection. Number 1, focus on those big ticket items. Guys, do not ask the seller to fix a loose outlet. Think about the monetary value of the items that you're asking for repair. So if it's under like $10, we're not gonna be asking for the seller to fix that. So don't get caught up on things like outlets and caulking, guys. You can do that yourself. This is a big purchase. And the second thing to know about the home inspection is to ask for credits instead of repairs. So if there are things that are wrong with the house, we wanna tally up those expenses and then ask for a seller credit instead of repairs, guys. And also be reasonable with your seller credit requests. So if the HVAC is broken and you need a new HVAC and it costs $5,000, don't say it costs $10,000 and ask for $10,000. Sellers will see right through that. So bottom line for the inspection, be reasonable, focus on big ticket items, and ask for a credit instead of repairs. The second reason why real estate deals fall apart is if the buyer's financing gets rejected. The most common way that this happens is if the buyer's credit score decreases or if the buyer's DTI, their debt to income ratio, increases above a certain amount where they're no longer qualified for that loan. So if you're a buyer, we wanna make sure that you don't get too excited with your credit card purchases. We wanna make sure you're not buying a lot of expensive furniture or opening up store credit cards, adding new debt from the time that you go under contract to your closing date. Be sure you're working with a great local lender who can assist you with questions on maybe what you should and shouldn't be buying if they're big purchases before you go ahead and close on that property. All right, guys, this is the big one. The third reason, actually the most common reason that deals fall through, is not hitting the like button. Be sure to hit the like button. It'll be good luck for your real estate purchase. Okay, but seriously, the third reason is low appraisals. And guys, this can absolutely wreck a transaction. So what is a low appraisal? Now, a buyer and a seller, they agree upon a price, the sales price, when they ratify the contract. That matters, but what really matters is what the bank has to say. So the bank will come out and they'll have an independent appraiser come to the property, walk through the property to make sure that the property is actually worth what the buyer and seller have agreed upon. And a low appraisal happens when, let's say, a buyer and a seller agree upon $500,000. The appraiser comes out and says, well, actually, according to the comparable properties, it's only worth $490,000. Well, now all of a sudden the loan amount changes and the bank will only lend up to $490,000. So we have this delta, this difference of $10,000. Now, a few things can happen from here. The buyer, they can come out of pocket and pay with cash to come up with that extra $10,000. Not many buyers want to do that. The seller, they can, come down to that $490,000. They can meet in the middle, or the buyer can back out of that deal. Now, I'm in Arlington, Virginia, an extreme seller's market. So not many sellers are lowering their price simply because there's a line of buyers behind that one buyer. So if that buyer says, well, you need to come down, the seller is going to say no, the buyer's going to back out, then the next buyer is going to take their place and maybe hopefully get a different appraiser, get a higher price, or just pay out of pocket for that difference. Some areas you will be able to meet in the middle. So it all comes down to how competitive your specific market is. And I've also heard of really good local lenders that are able to work the numbers and maybe change your down payment amount. You might have a slightly higher monthly payment, but you won't have to come out of pocket significantly if there is a low appraisal. So that's another really good reason to have a local lender on your team. The fourth reason why real estate deals fall apart is when the buyer gets cold feet. So maybe the buyer got really emotional and happy and excited when they won the multiple offer scenario, when they saw the property was staged, but now the property's empty, the emotions have kind of worn off, and now they're not thinking about the house, they're thinking more about the monthly payments and how expensive that house is going to be, and for whatever reason, they're no longer interested in the property, and then they decide to back out within their due diligence period. It could be cold feet. I've even seen some buyers that will place 2 contracts on 2 different properties at the same time if there's like a multiple offer situation. And I've also seen a buyer be under contract and then go ahead and put a bid on a newer property that just came on the market, and then they just backed out of that old deal. Guys, these are situations that I would certainly never recommend to any buyer. You never want to be a party to 2 contracts, but a funny thing happens when there's a lot of money and there's a lot of emotions involved. People tend to do crazy things, and they could have a change of heart. And when you're looking at the pending sale and then it comes back on the market, it could be something as simple as the buyer getting cold feet. The 5th reason why real estate deals fall apart is when there's an issue with the title. Now, this is a lesser known reason, but it comes into play when there's something called a cloud on title. And this basically means when there's a lien or some sort of judgment against the seller when they try to sell the property. So for example, let's say the seller didn't pay the taxes and the IRS put a lien on the property of $50,000. That's the amount that the seller owes to the IRS. Now, when the seller goes to sell their property and the buyer wants to buy it, well, maybe the seller doesn't have a lot of equity in their house, and the IRS says, hey, listen, you can sell this, but we need to take our cut of $50,000. Well, now if the seller doesn't have enough equity, they're not able, they just don't have enough money to cover that spread of $50,000, and they're not able to actually transfer the property from the seller, from their ownership to the buyer. It's the seller's responsibility to clear up any sort of title defects, things like IRS liens, mechanics liens, things of that nature. And as a buyer, you don't really have a defense to this. It's not like you would ever go pull titles of every property that you were interested in writing an offer on. But this is one of more of those wild card scenarios. And another good reason to have a really good local title company that you trust and that can do paperwork quickly and that can offer up really creative solutions if you do come across any sort of title defects. Reason number 6 that real estate deals fall apart is when the buyer doesn't have enough money for closing costs. Now, this comes into play when buyers are approved and they're maybe on the edge, or maybe they've had a conversation with their lender who advises that they need to be really careful with their spending between now when they go under contract to closing date. And maybe there were some unexpected expenses, some medical bills, maybe a car accident or something unexpected that was a major out-of-pocket expense, and now they simply don't have the funds to go to closing. I've seen parents, I've seen aunts, uncles, relatives jump in at the last minute and offer a gift fund where they're essentially giving the buyer money for closing. And guys, that saves the deal, but you want to think about 3 really important things if you are on the edge. Number 1, ask your lender, ask your real estate agent if you're able to negotiate closing costs into the purchase, where if you're in a buyer's market where the buyers have the leverage, you're able to have the seller pay for some or all of your closing costs. Second thing to think about is to save every penny between now and closing. And guys, the third thing to think about is if you're really tight on money and you're not sure if you can pay for all the closing costs, don't buy a house. Maybe now is not the right time to purchase a home. I know that sounds kind of backwards, but if you can't pay for closing costs, maybe there's a better time. Maybe it makes more sense to save up some more money now and go ahead and buy a house sometime in the future. And reason number 7 that real estate deals fall apart is when a buyer's property does not sell. So a lot of buyers, they need to sell their first property in order to move up and buy their next house. They need those funds. And if that initial house doesn't sell quickly, that purchase deal could fall apart. We're not really seeing homes being contingent on the sale of another property. Maybe a few years ago, we'd see Home of Sale Contingencies, where we'd write in the contract that a home would have to sell in order for that next purchase to go through. But what we are seeing is when a buyer does find a property that they like, they put the offer in, they get accepted, and then they rush to list their home and sell that quickly. And as you can imagine, you have this kind of snowball effect where if this house doesn't sell, then the buyer can't move up, and then the sellers of this house, if they can't sell that home quickly, or if the buyer backs out and they're trying to buy another property, well, then now you have this snowball effect where a lot of deals may fall through. This is a perfect opportunity to maybe submit a lowball offer. And if you haven't seen the lowball offer video, I'll list it up right here. So if you ask the listing agent, why is the seller selling? And they say, oh, they're under contract on another property and they have to sell this home. Well, that could be a perfect opportunity to submit a lowball offer, since you know that the sellers have to sell quickly. All right, guys, there you have it, the top 7 reasons why real estate deals fall through. If you learned anything, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. It would really mean a lot to me. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, create a productive day. Take care.